Hello. Happy New Year's, y'all. Welcome back to Clapback Culture. And I don't know if y'all could tell, but I am excited to be back. Julia, that break felt like forever.
I
I am your
know.
co-host, Mike Davis of the South Seattle Emerald. I'm here with Julia Jessie of Converge Media. How you doing tonight, Julia?
I'm good. Happy New Year, Mike. You're right. It definitely does feel like when we are off air, everything happens and then we don't get to come on here and talk about it. So here we are with a host full of topics. So happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for coming again. I'm happy to be here. I love clapback, man.
Me
Like
too.
if
Me
you
too.
think about it, it's been over a year since we've been doing the show and we've been coming and I just feel like it just is getting better and better. So I'm excited for what 2022 has in store for us, for the show, for our live viewing audience. And yeah, you guys tap in, connect with us on the show tonight and let us hear your thoughts and opinions, unfiltered, uncensored. Let's get into it.
Oh, they're here too. I'm
Yeah,
looking at the
y'all
comments.
just in
They're
the
here.
building.
What's
They,
up,
they
y'all?
missed it. They missed clapback just like we did.
Look at Darnell with the Converge hoodie too. I see you, Darnell.
Yeah, what's up, Darnell? Darnell's always sending me so many topics. He always sends me a bunch of funny stuff on IG too. So thank you, Darnell, for always keeping me up to date with the new. Speaking of new, Mike, it's crazy, but we are back into a new surge of COVID-19. And of course, President Biden, his administration came and had a conversation about it. And basically, I'm not getting the sense that the federal government has a clear understanding of what to do. But in addition to some of the things that he mentioned, he's basically just urging the concern of people, going to get vaccinated, getting boosted, wearing, well-fitted masks according to the CDC. But for the most part, it's just kind of like, yeah, we know it's buzzing, but don't trip.
You're 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 right. You're absolutely right. And I'm gonna have plenty of room to criticize Joe Biden later. But I do think that on this specific issue, I mean, he's caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, at the end of the day, the word of the day is jobs. JOB. They need people to go to work, and that's what it's about. They need the economy to be boosted. They need enough workers to work. That's why we've seen like Delta step up and make those comments. And next thing you know, the CDC's cut the guidelines from a 10-day isolation to a 5-day. They need people to be able to go to work. And it's hard to balance like the science that's dictating what we should do to be safe and beat COVID versus what our economy needs and how they need these essential workers to actually show up and do their jobs. And another piece of that is the schools. They need kids in school so that their parents could go to work, but putting kids in school puts everybody at risk for the virus. So it's a really tough spot. And to be honest, I don't really see the way out.
Yeah, I think you don't see a way out. I don't think I see a way out. And our administration and really a lot of the local officials, really are just kind of, it's like trial by fire, trial by error at this point. We're all just trying to figure out what works best for our communities, for our workplaces, for our schools. And I don't think there's a perfect remedy, if you will. And so, this idea of being vaccinated, right? There's 35 million people, according to President Biden's address, that are still unvaccinated. And so, with that being said, I'm just not sure if we've really hit that mark where we can say that the vaccine is actually working because people are on their third dose, and recommendations coming out of Israel, they're on their fourth dose, Mike. And so when we think about what the best method is for COVID-19, I just think we don't have it yet. And so I'm going to continue to mask up and really just kind of stay out the way because it is running rampant here in DC.
I mean, it's running rampant literally everywhere. I think I just read that New York just had the highest 1-day total since we've been recording in the beginning of the pandemic. Like we're right back to those numbers that started this original shutdown. I think that the idea that they're pushing is get vaccinated, which alone, of course, isn't going to work. But I think it will stop the hospitals from being overrun. And I think that in the position that the government is in, they feel that that's the best they could do. What scares me right now, though, is this term that I keep hearing, mild symptoms, mild symptoms. And I'm like, what are mild symptoms? And it scares me because they talk about mild symptoms and they're talking about losing your sense of taste and smell, or like brain fog, or like they got people having migraine headaches that are lasting for months. And it's like, yo, I don't really know if losing one of my senses is something that I would personally consider mild. And I mean, if there was ever like a commercial for, yo, go get vaccinated, it's what we're seeing right now. And I'm curious to ask you personally if this is true for you, but I know for me, yo, I know way more people that got this Omicron than any other variant. It's like every time I look up, someone that I know personally now has COVID. Luckily, nobody's been in the hospital, but it's like everybody is getting it. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's harder not to get it than to get it. Amari was talking about this on the morning update today, in that this is the first time, like, since COVID hit, you know, like that's, I guess that's the way we're referencing things now, but it's like since COVID hit. And he was saying, like, this is the first time that he's, you know, had people like directly he knows who have it, where, you know, when I got COVID, it was like this big thing, this whole like, oh my God, you got COVID. Like, are you going to die? Whereas with the Omicron variant, it's kind of like, dang, such and such got COVID. So they got COVID. I mean, my group chat is like such and such got COVID. They got COVID. They got COVID. When you talk to people like that you haven't seen, it's like, hey girl, how are you? It's like, hey girl, I'm good. You know, just trying to stay away from COVID. Like, it's really like, that's the conversation. So
you're
it's
absolutely
different.
right. And that brings us to our next topic, which is the CDC, and kind of talking about the shift in these guidelines. And again, I mean, it's back to jobs and allowing people to go back to work. But when they first put this out and they talked about, if you test positive, stay at the crib for 5 days, you could go back to work without a negative test. It's like, what? Like, where's the science in this type of decision? I mean, this is strictly financial. It's crazy.
I mean, if you think about it though, like if somebody has the flu, technically, if you're not having symptoms, because the CDC guidelines, you guys, and please look them up yourself. We'll probably drop those in the chat if we can, but go check it out on the CDC website. They talk about the difference between quarantine and isolation. So if you are still experiencing symptoms, then your 5-day thing does not count, right? Like if on day 5 you still have a fever, you should not return to work or school. But after 5 days, if you are not, you know, experiencing any more symptoms, then I guess you're like free to go, which I kind of agree with. I think the best thing about all of this is just the sheer funniness on social media when that first came out, and everybody like just having a ball with it. So again, Mike, what does anybody know at this point, right?
We
Like,
don't know.
we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Wear your mask, get vaccinated, and you can still get it. Like, people who are masked up, washing their hands, cleaning their areas, social distancing, boosted, they're still testing positive. So at this point,
just get vaccinated, y'all. At the end of the day, that's your best bet to actually get it and to still be out here. I think the larger picture that I kind of see, and sometimes I connect dots that shouldn't be connected, but I do look at the fact that we were unable to get Americans guaranteed paid sick leave. So people get sick, they can't really stay at home. The rent moratorium, that federal moratorium, is donezo. Student loans are right around the corner. So it's like, people have to go back to work. And if you're watching social media, we are seeing cases where people got COVID and they are going back to work because they need the money. So at the end of the day, protect yourself, because that's probably going to be the most that any of us could do right now.
Yeah. And, you know, I think we need to close out on this topic, but I think you bring up a good point in that we have to begin to really embrace this idea of the new normal. Like, we talk about that, but I think that, you know, job creators and, you know, and business owners, you know, our governments, like people that employ us, the school systems, we have to be prepared to transition into a virtual capacity just moving forward in general. And everything to do with COVID, but almost everything not to do with that, right? Like I am so much more comfortable working from home. I get entirely more done in my whole day as a whole, right? Like I can throw something in the washer and still check all my emails, get on my calls. Like how many more people I can meet on Zoom? I don't have to get out, drive, park, do, go to the dry cleaners, blah, blah, blah. Like we're
Facts.
just so much more efficient working in a digital capacity that I just wish that people would embrace that and get this idea that we have to be in a brick and mortar all with each other in a cubicle to be efficient, because that's not the truth. I also think for schools, yes, obviously we need to have in-person learning. That's the best way because we still have to, teach our kids the social emotional skills. However, virtual, online classes exist. So we do need to be able to really equip our schools with technology that is equipped to house this kind of teaching environment. So we need to have both. And so here we are. The pandemic is the pandemic, but we have learned that this is kind of a new way of life, this new normal. And if we are going to have to embrace some things, I honestly believe this is something that we have to embrace and get used to.
Well said.
Virtual setting is honestly the way to go.
Well said. And wash your hands and wear your mask.
Period. All right, you guys, moving away from COVID. Something else that hit the news, y'all, was that the New York, Attorney General is, issuing subpoenas for Donald Trump Jr. and his sister Ivanka Trump. Child, this right here, Mike Davis, we really knew that this was going to happen. AG James is the same one. She's coming with that heat for the Trump organization, isn't she?
She ain't playing.
I love it. And so let me tell you what they have been subpoenaed for, just to remind you guys. And I'm going to refer to my notes. But according to an article I found on CNN, they were subpoenaed into that investigation into the Trump organization's valuation of properties owned or controlled by that organization. So, what does that mean? They're looking into the properties and businesses that are owned by the Trump organization, and they are wondering. The allegation is that the Trump organization either falsely evaluated or valuated those assets, right? To work in their favor to get tax cuts. So that's a lot of money. I think in one property that they mentioned, they got a tax break of over $21 million. So this is not no chump change. This is something big. And so these subpoenas, obviously, the Trump lawyers are, going to argue that down. They're not going to just give in. But it's interesting that AG James is coming with that pressure. She's not letting up.
That's my biggest takeaway from this as well, is AG James ain't playing. She already subpoenaed Eric Trump. He had to come in. He sat down. He did his disposition. Now we got the next two up. And I don't think she's going to give up. Like, she's dedicated to this cause. And it's good that somebody's actually trying to hold the Trumps accountable. So I'm all for it. And I have no idea what's going to come out of all of this. The Trumps are going to come with a team of lawyers, but at least somebody's out here applying that pressure. So shout out to AG James for staying with it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking in the comments. My aunt, Laura Gaddy, she says, I think no jail time, but huge fines for sure. I mean, if nothing else, we're talking about large organizations and, I guess celebrities, if you will, that are oftentimes misleading banks to, either establish loans or, misevaluating, anything to get those tax savings. And I just think that's not cool, considering now, like, I'm a W-2 and I'm looking at my check and I was like, dang, that's $400 taken out, like, before you even see it. So if the average American, if we are paying a super high percentage in our wages, then these organizations and these people who are really in this 1% making this money, they absolutely need to pay their share. So I think Joe Biden, talks about that in his leadership style. So we'll see a lot of that moving forward. But shout out to AG James for keeping that heat on the Trump organization. If nothing else, it's going to continue to keep that Trump family in the news and hopefully cast a more of a black shadow for that 2024 run.
And those fines are going to mean something, though, man. Like, Trump's finances have been questionable for a long time. We really don't know exactly where he's at financially because we haven't really got to see. So if they are able to come with these fines, it's going to hurt.
Well, another person who used to be socializing with Donald Trump has landed in the slammer. We got Ghislaine Maxwell, you guys. She was found guilty. So I don't know if you've heard of this story, Mike, or anyone else, but I have been following this tough. Ghislaine Maxwell is a British socialite, y'all, who basically gained her notoriety as being the former girlfriend and social companion to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. So let me back it up a little bit and give you guys some context. Do you guys remember Epstein? He was like that financer. Nobody really knew what he did, but he was kind of this like big time socialite, and he was around all of the who's, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew,
Bill Gates.
Oh, I didn't know, but I didn't know he was. Well, I mean, the who's who, child. If you were around Prince Andrew,
his wife came out and said, his wife came out and put that tea out. Yeah, not a good look. Not a good look.
So look, you guys. So you guys remember, back in 2019, Epstein was found dead in his cell. The medical examiner reported that he committed suicide. And he did not ever make it to trial. He did plead not guilty, but he wasn't granted bail. Okay, let's catch our breath. With that being said, Epstein was awaiting trial on federal charges accusing him of operating a sex trafficking ring from 2002 to 2005. Ghislaine Maxwell is what I would argue to be his co-conspirator. And so the victims in this sex trafficking case have alleged that Ghislaine Maxwell was basically the chief of staff, honey, and making sure that that Epstein got what he wanted. So here we are, present day. Ghislaine Maxwell was charged. She was convicted, and she's now facing up to 65 years in prison related to these sex trafficking charges. I never thought we would see the day. Now, here's the caveat, Mike. The jury, two of these jurors have come out after she was convicted, and they're talking about the trial. Now, it's opening up this can of worms. And it can't lead to a mistrial, but it's leading into her being able to appeal the case, you guys, so that she doesn't have to do any jail time. Let's take a look.
The sex trafficking conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell faces a new challenge this morning. Maxwell's attorneys say they are seeking a new trial after a juror gave media interviews where he said that he himself was a victim of sexual abuse. Another juror later made a similar statement. Now, last week, Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend was found guilty on 5 different charges. Mola Lenghi explains why the jurors' actions could now be a big problem.
Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking conviction is now anything but done. New doubts about whether her trial was fair over comments by jurors. In recent media interviews, 2 jurors say that sometime during the 5 days of deliberations, they revealed that they themselves were sexually abused in the past. Former prosecutor Moira Penza.
That juror could face criminal penalties if it was found that he purposely misled the court. That would absolutely be grounds for a new trial.
At issue is whether or not the disclosures were made during jury selection. Before the trial, potential jurors were asked to fill out this questionnaire, including this question: have you ever been the victim of sexual assault? One juror, using only his first and middle names, Scotty David, told Reuters he can't remember if he disclosed his own claims of sex abuse, saying he flew through the initial questionnaire. He told Reuters he would have answered the questions honestly. Prosecutors told the judge overseeing the trial the statements merit attention by the court. Maxwell's lawyers then told the judge she can and should order a new trial. A separate juror told the New York Times they spoke of their own sexual abuse during deliberations, which the paper says appeared to help shape the jury's discussions.
Anyone would say that having to retry a case would be a benefit to the defense. They will have seen how the prosecution has already tried their case.
For CBS Mornings, I'm Mola Lengi.
It's a very interesting turn.
Ooh, this is an interesting story. I love that you guys are following this just as much as me. Like, I have been on Hulu, on Netflix, on YouTube.
It's
Like,
fascinating.
I can't get enough of this story. I mean, and no disrespect to the victims, but this is just such a wild sex trafficking thing with young girls, with all of the top celebrities.
Billionaires, though. Like, that's the thing. Like, this is all of the little rumors and whispers that we hear about all of the weird stuff that billionaires do. This was the chance that it was all going to come to light. Like,
Yes.
Epstein ends up dead. And now it's looking like, I can't believe the jurors did that. Like, how? This is so unbelievable. Like, when I seen that,
it doesn't seem like a mistake, though, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Does not seem like a mistake.
No.
Ghislaine Maxwell was too big of a heavy hitter. This is a girl who grew up in a castle, okay? Like, her family got bread. It's just too much money and too many powerful people connected to this investigation that I wouldn't doubt if someone said, hey, come here, little Jim Bob who sat on this trial. Let me go ahead and make sure that you do this, and we're going to make sure that this gets out. Yes. Don't worry about anything else, right? I mean, these people are getting paid off.
The last thing that these billionaires want is for her to name names.
Come on.
They didn't want Epstein to name names. They don't want these people naming names, man. They're flying these young girls out to these private islands that people own. Like
14.
They don't want that to get out. The homies don't want that to get out. So no, I was not surprised. I was upset. Like, I can't believe. Oh man.
Well, you guys, I see that you guys are all following and tracking this story. Please hit me up in my DMs with more tea and more information if you find it. There's nothing we can do but continue to just watch. I can't imagine how Ghislaine Maxwell feels sitting in a 4x6 jail cell, just kind of sitting there getting it in. She definitely is in jail now. She's in like the county jail, which sucks because, you know, she's not really allotted any freedoms. And, you know, a part of me always has so much empathy for people who are incarcerated because, you know, we are a humane system. And so she should absolutely have access to regular things, right? Like, her time in jail shouldn't be like all jacked up. But anyway, it is being reported by her lawyers that she is not doing very well. And so, you know, she's a 60-year-old woman. I know that she's not doing too well. This is like a huge change in course for her. But I guess, you know, it's what happens when you help powerful men have sex with young girls.
I'm not even gonna lie. I wish she would. There was some place of protection that they could put her to make sure that she makes it from point A to point B. But it's going to be tough now.
She's not going to roll.
I don't think so.
I would bet my last dollar that she's not going to roll, only because she could have gotten a deal before this. She's willing to go the extra mile.
She would never been charged if she was willing to talk, most likely. I think what worries me about the situation now, though, is the fact that they went through the trial, so they know everything that the state was coming with. So now they got all the tools to actually retool and come back to fight if she gets
exactly. All the evidence is already out there, so it makes it very difficult to go and have a second trial. But listen, y'all, we will be on this. I will definitely be on it because it's just too much, and so I'm hoping somebody drops a book or a documentary or something. I want to know more. All right. Do we need to go to break? Oh, no. Before we go to break, child, Marjorie Taylor Greene is finally banned from Twitter, you guys, for the COVID misinformation, man. She's finally out. So Twitter is saying she's out. She's not coming back in. It's not surprising because she's built her career by promoting viral conspiracy theories like QAnon. So this is kind of like par for the course for her. But Twitter came out and suspended her on Sunday. And then on Monday, Facebook followed suit and suspended her, or banned her, excuse me, not suspended, but banned her for posting misinformation about COVID. And both of those social media platforms have been super strict as it relates to COVID, you guys. So we already knew this was coming and they kind of had the grounds to this. But Mike, I have a question for you. We're coming into like this new age thing where social platforms, these big tech companies are having a lot of control on, people would argue, freedom of speech. How do we know what to censor, what not to censor, and how will social media companies deal with this like oncoming onslaught of politicians and elected officials and celebrities and people with these huge platforms? How do you think these social media companies who are privately owned, how do you think they should manage that?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that's one of the more interesting things within this topic. I mean, now the funny part is, this was strike 5. Like, who gets 5? Like, Twitter gave her 5 strikes. She got 5 strikes for doing the same exact thing 5 times. That's wild. It's like she must have wanted to be banned. But on a more serious tip, I've thought about this a lot because isn't it Congress who keeps bringing all of the owners of these companies and making them come and sit before, and they got to testify. And that always has rubbed me weird because who has the most to gain from misinformation in social media? It's politicians. Like, they're literally the ones who gain the most. Like, elections are won and lost by what's going on social media. So do we really want Congress and elected officials to be the ones who are doing this regulation? It would be nice if there was a separate body that could oversee these things. But when we come into free speech, I'm definitely going to have to throw this back at you because, I mean, I want to know what Marjorie Taylor Greene is up to. Hell, I want to know what Donald Trump is up to. I want to know what these people are up to. When Donald Trump was on Twitter, we knew what he was doing every minute of every day because he was posting it all day, every day. And it might be some BS. It might be some lies and misinformation. But the people who are following Marjorie Taylor Greene, the people that are rolling with Matt Gaetz, people that are rolling with Donald Trump, they're going to roll with them regardless of if they have these large platforms or not. So really, by silencing her, all we're doing is hurting our own ability to know what they're up to. On the flip side, though, as we've seen with the January 6th insurrection, even when the information for what these people are doing is right there in front of our faces, we fail to even act anyway. So I guess I didn't answer your question at all. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think I'm torn. I know we talked about this when she was first suspended, when Donald Trump was suspended, and how much big tech companies should actually have how much stake they should have when censoring political figures. You guys answer that. You know, what do you guys think? We want to hear from you. I'm torn. I think it's a slippery slope. I agree with you that, you know, we live in an environment right now where everything is kind of sensationalized. I spend hours on social media, especially now as the comms director for my council member. I'm seeing like how much I'm on Twitter and just how much of a resource it is because there's so much information. Which brings me to, when you have a platform and you're using your platform against the terms of service, and you're sending out fake news, misinformation, and you're kind of galvanizing a group to kind of get behind you on that, things like the January 6th insurrection happen and people get hurt and people get killed. And so when we think about that, it's super irresponsible. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she still has access to her email through Congress. So she still has 400,000 followers on that, but her personal Twitter account was banned. And so she's not able to tweet from there. I'm like you, I'm still interested to know what Donald Trump has to say, but he's going to have to do it in a press release and figure it out in a different format. Like he's going to have to come up with a website that's just not going to get banned. And I think it's important that we do have these restrictions because we're just getting to a place where nothing is censored, nothing is filtered, and people are getting hurt. And there's just like this new wave of fake news and misinformation is just like gone rampant. Like it's just not cool. And we just got to lock it down.
I guess I could get next to that. It's just hard. I do this. I'm here. Like I can't be for censorship. I just can't. Like there's a piece of me that just isn't for it. But I do understand what you're saying. And when you look at like the specific things that she was tweeting, these are things that can literally lead to people losing their lives. Like this is like medical misinformation during a global pandemic that is more rampant in the United States than anywhere else in the world. Like we are the world record holders. Like we lead the league in COVID in whatever statistical category you want to name. So it is important to not allow people to do that misinformation. I just wish that there was a better way to do it. But I do want to say one thing, and this is way off topic, but I'm looking in the comments and everybody's loving your jacket. The jacket's fly. So just go ahead and tell us where the jacket came from. Let us know.
Oh, this is just from Forever 21, y'all. I had this for a lot of years. And in fact, I've put on too much weight. So it's a shirt that I'm wearing as a jacket. So shout out to 2022 and my weight loss journey. One day the jacket will go back to a shirt and it'll button up.
Well, the jacket is fly, and I know you be wearing stuff that your homies be making. That's why.
Of course.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Nah, so look, y'all, let's take a quick break. But when we come back, we're gonna do it for the culture and talk about what's going on there. Stay tuned.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, y'all. Welcome back to Clapback Culture. So glad to have you here. And glad to bring up this topic that came out, you guys. Antonio Brown quit mid-game and stormed off the field during the third quarter in a game. Since then, he has released a statement, but let's take a look at what happened during Sunday's game.
His shoulder pads, Mike Evans, OJ Howard trying to convince him to keep them on. Obviously, they were unable to do so. He tossed his shoulder pads, stripped off his shirt and glove, threw those into the crowd, then ran across the field while the teams were still on the field, giving the crowd a peace out sign. I'll let you know when we hear something official on his status.
Thank you, Jen. It may be an Antonio Brown out in Tampa Bay. At some point, enough is enough. Brady. Catch inside the 10. Watching the behavior, unusual behavior, in-game behavior of the shirtless Antonio Brown. Mike, not necessarily a penalty because he didn't interfere with the on-play activity?
Yeah, if he doesn't interfere with play and he's just headed to the locker room, you're not going to call anything there. He can throw things into the stands. It's a fine if he throws a football into the stands. But, you know, in this situation, let him get out of there and don't bring any more attention on him than you have to.
All right, thanks. That's the official ruling. Now, whether there'll be some kind of fine. Obviously, the team was frustrated, but over on the sideline, Jen Hale described that he was angry. Somebody tried to calm him down. I think it was Mike Evans. So he took off his jersey and then his shirt. And then as he throws this in, he was moving around on the field when they weren't snapping the ball, but the teams were on the field lined up for a play. And there's his.
I've never seen.
All right. Well, that's one way to quit a job. Having such good conversation with Rodney today about this that I had to go to my source for sports information. And Rodney gave me some really good insight. He is a former college athlete who played football. So he gave me a lot of good insight on this, because at first I was like, well, let me back up, y'all. Let's back up. Antonio Brown released a statement today, and here is what he said about the incident. He said, "I took a seat on the sideline and my coach came up to me very upset and shouted, 'What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?' I told him it's my ankle, but he knew that. It was all well documented and we had discussed it. He then ordered me to get on the field. I said, 'Coach, I can't.' He didn't call for medical attention. Instead, he shouted at me, 'You're done,' while running his finger across his throat. Coach was telling me that if I didn't play hurt, then I was done from the Bucks." Brown later added that what happened, that because of that situation, he was triggered and that's why he left the field. He later goes on in the statement and says, "I know we were losing to the Jets and that was frustrating for all of us, but I couldn't make football plays on that ankle. Yes, I walked off the field, but there's a major difference between launching from the line and taking hits compared to jogging off the field with a rush of emotions going through your mind. I'm reflecting on my reaction, but there was a trigger. The trigger was someone telling me that I'm not allowed to feel pain."
That's a lot.
What? Okay.
That's a lot.
Go ahead. What do you think? Because my perspective has totally changed on this story.
I think this story is complex, and I think I have perspectives in a lot of places. I think where I'll start is, I don't care who you are and where you work. If you see somebody that you work with take off their uniform, their t-shirt, their whatever that company issued attire may be, if they take that off, leave up out of there bare-chested, chucking the deuce to the customers, that looks like mental illness to me. That's not something that a regular, everyday person, you don't quit your job. Not like that. I mean, he walked across the field during the game. It wasn't a penalty because they didn't snap the ball, but bro walked through the end zone. Some of the security, like people are in the comments saying that they've seen the security. There was reports on ESPN that some of the security guards from afar didn't really recognize what was going on, and he looked like a streaker. Like he almost got tackled on his way out. So it's like, it can't be that. But what I will say in Antonio Brown's defense, and he's reached a place in a lot of people's mind where he's indefensible. There's the video of him farting in somebody's face, which was weird. There's the allegations of him not paying back debts in like the most outlandish ways you could imagine. There was some sexual assault allegations. There was all kind of stuff. So people have all types of feels about Antonio Brown. He posted text message conversations between him and Coach Arians that show before the game, he told him that he was hurt.
Allegedly.
And he was hurt. And after the game, he went and he got an MRI. He is hurt and he does need surgery on that ankle. The way that athletes, particularly NFL players, are treated like pieces of meat instead of human beings is something that needs to be addressed. And the idea that a guy who needs surgery, it's documented, the team knows, the coach knows, everyone knows that this guy is hurt, that they're going to just try to shoot him up with a drug, which we know is very harmful on his body as well. And to expect him to go out there and break his leg for the football team, I don't think that that's a reasonable request.
So I think you're straddling both sides of the fence, and
sure.
and I think that's okay because we're talking about both sides of the story. I would argue that Antonio Brown is a drama queen, and the way that he left the field was blatant disrespect to his teammates. and walking off mid-game. Now, you can be triggered and you can, throw a tantrum, which is what he did. But he also played, like, I think it was 27 plays before he decided that his ankle was hurt. On top of the fact that he was medically cleared by the Bucs to play in the game. If Antonio Brown, and we can put up Harry Jefferson's comment, if Antonio Brown if he didn't have so many blemishes on his record, people could excuse him. Like, they could look, but right now he's kind of like the guy who cried wolf. You know what I'm saying? Like, it gets to the point where an organization is looking at you like, do you fit our brand? Now, if he really had an injury, he could have healed in the 6 weeks that he was out for the injury and the additional 3 weeks that he had because he submitted a false vaccination card, right? On top of the fact that he still has this ongoing rape case with his former trainer. And Tom Brady vouched for him to even get on this team. So I just think it's a big slap in the face to people who are trying to give you not a first chance, not a second chance, not a third chance, but a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth chance. And so for you to have the audacity to feel like you can just quit and somebody is like saying, you know what, we really like rock with you. It's kind of like the only thing you really need to do is show up and play. Like, not like how people are like, oh, LeBron, just shut up and dribble. Like, Antonio Brown, what are you contributing to the organization off the field except for drama? And so if you really have a substantial injury, have meaningful conversations with your medical team, with your staff, with your trainers, with your coaches, not in text messages, like not like, oh, here's a screenshot of me, like I'm really not feeling well, because you're the same guy who misses practices, that has documented missed practices, missed trainings, shows up, has a bad attitude. And so people just are just like, you know what, this guy, like there's always something going on. And so it's really hard to believe somebody who is like that. You know what I'm saying?
I do. But, and this is a big but, teams across sports have their own doctors. So the doctors that the Bucs have, they work for the Bucs. So it's hard sometimes to trust it. I mean, we see this across sport. We've seen this with like Kawhi Leonard is a really famous example. He played for the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs doctors kept saying that he was healthy. He could play. Turns out he wasn't healthy. He hasn't been the same since, and it's been years. So it's hard to trust the team doctors. I think with Antonio Brown, he has lost a lot of credit because of all of his antics. The problem, especially like when you talk about the rape allegations and things like that, he's a really, really good football player. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won that Super Bowl. Your boy was out there balling that day. Antonio Brown is hands down one of the best wide receivers in the history of the NFL. Guys like that are always going to get chances, especially in the NFL. And when I look at this story, it reminds me of Monday night. And if any of y'all watch football, Monday night was literally a 3.5-hour commercial for Ben Roethlisberger, one of Antonio Brown's former teammates.
He threw a football at during practice.
Yes, but Ben Roethlisberger raped multiple women. But
he did?
Google it. He settled out of court and he never had criminal charges, but those civil cases, he settled multiple. One of them was a black woman. So in the NFL, if you show up and you play football, they're going to look the other way on anything as long as what you did wasn't on camera. So watching them celebrate Big Ben for 3.5 hours, watching them circle the whole stadium as he walked around and high-fived a whole front row stadium worth of fans without any mention of his sexual assault allegations, it just shows in the NFL, at the end of the day, if you can play, they're going to look the other way on everything. For Antonio Brown, all of his antics happened, but he was always allowed to come back to the team. Walking off the field in this fashion, that's questionable. You can't quit on your team. Like that's the golden rule, and he broke that rule.
I'm with Chip on I'm not sure about all the off-field rapey stuff, because that's just giving that, I think, plays into your argument that professional athletes oftentimes can be dehumanized and treated like cattle, right? And it's kind of like, he's so good. He's the best wide receiver in the league. Let's go ahead and give him a $30 million contract so then he can come play with us. And let's just pretend like the rapey stuff never happened, or he hasn't technically been found guilty. So let's just get him the best lawyers to go ahead and resolve that. So you're right. I mean, Antonio Brown is a part of a very toxic environment. And so maybe he's just the guy that says, I don't want to subscribe to this toxic environment the way that I want to, even though he is a drama queen. And so on and off the field. Anyway, this story is interesting. I'm sure it will get even better because I really want to know if he will be picked up by another team.
He will.
You think so?
I absolutely think so. He's going to get that. He's already set to get that surgery. Somebody's going to pick him up. It's the NFL. He didn't rape that girl on camera.
Disgusting.
He'll be okay.
Disgusting. All right. Well, moving forward, Kim Potter, she was sent directly to prison after a guilty verdict. How much time does she face? I looked into the charges, you guys, and I'm going to pull up my notes, my handy dandy notes. And this is kind of frustrating, right? When you think about when we are prosecuting law enforcement officials, like these people never really get like big sentences, but she got charged with first-degree manslaughter. Those charges carry a maximum sentence of 15 years and second-degree maximum sentence of 10 years for the second-degree charge that she received. It's likely, because she's never been to jail, she doesn't have a criminal record, that she could face probably, it's estimated, between 6 and 8 years. In Minnesota, it's presumed that a defendant with good behavior will serve 2/3 of their sentence in prison and 1/3 on supervised release or parole. So sounds like if she got 6 years, she probably would only do 3 years in prison and the rest, on supervised parole.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised that they took her. Like, they didn't let her go home for the holidays. They took her immediately. But
yeah, they should have.
You're right. I was surprised that they did that. I'm glad that the charges were filed. I wish that the penalties would be stiffer, but yeah, man. I mean, sometimes it just feels like we can't catch a break. I mean, when you look at what she did, it was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah, you killed a 21-year-old kid because you thought it was a taser, which is crazy. So real quick, I'm sorry, you guys. I thought we talked about this. Maybe this all happened while we were on break. So I apologize. So Kim Potter is a former police officer. She was sentenced. She's going to be sentenced in February, at the end of February, for first and second degree manslaughter in the fatal shooting of Daunte Wright. This comes at, a couple weeks after the Derek Chauvin trial. Anyway, what happened, she and a trainee officer not allegedly anymore, but they pulled over Wright, who was driving in a car with his girlfriend. And they said that they pulled him over because he had a blinker on the wrong turn lane, expired tags, and an air freshener hanging in the rearview mirror, which is just so annoying. Anyway, they attempted to detain him. You guys can pull up the video. They attempted to detain him, and after discovering that he had a warrant, they tried to arrest him, blah, blah, blah. Boom. Potter, excuse me. I don't know why I want to call her Porter. Potter pulls out a gun, which she alleges she thought was a taser. Daunte Wright is no longer with us. So now she's facing prison time. I don't know. 6 years? 6 to 8?
It's not enough. It's not enough. Am I wrong on this, or was she like a trainer for the police department?
No, she was a trainer. She was a firearms trainer. Yeah.
It doesn't. To me, I don't believe that excuse should fly. I think she should get more time than what she did. I'll never understand how we don't hold the police to a higher standard than what we hold the public to. It's like the opposite, like you have this job, you want to be called a hero, you have all these lives in your hands, yet there's no hardcore accountability that makes you work to the highest standard. That's not a mistake that you should be able to make. I just seen a story with a truck driver whose brakes went out while he was on the job, and they tried to give him 110 years. And it's like, why are we holding this truck driver to a higher standard than we hold police officers to? That'll never make sense to me.
I heard about that. And yeah, and the judge is actually overturning his sentence and looking into resentencing him. So that was really dope. And a lot of truck drivers backed him up on that. And even Kim Kardashian got involved in that case. But we are coming up to the end of our show, and we would be remiss, y'all, if we did not talk about the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection. It's something that Mike and I have talked about a lot in private conversations and on the day that it happened. I don't know how long we have for that clip. I wanted to show the clip of President Biden discussing kind of, where we're at today. But I think it's such I can't believe we're 365 days from when that happened. And I just remember in that moment, Mike, how scared I was and was like, what's going to happen when they take over the Capitol? Because they did. And then are they going to bleed into kind of like these residential areas? I'm in a government building. Are they going to come down here? What's at stake, right? And so when we think about that, I think it's super important that we remember that these rioters, these insurrectionists, they came armed, right? Heavily armed, equipped with chemical sprays, with flagpoles and tasers, and they smashed their way through these buildings and they scaled the fence. And they battled with law enforcement officials. Like, this was a bloody mess. And 5 people lost their life that day. So 1 law enforcement official and 4 other Trump supporters, 3 of which had medical emergencies, and 1 of which who was actually crushed in the melee. And so this is something, when we have these conversations about whether or not Donald Trump or somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene should be banned, this is why, because these people were amplified through social media and they were gassed up to be able to do this and felt so empowered based on this misinformation to be able to go and do this. And so, this kind of threat to our democracy is just something that I can't get on board with that. And so when we're talking about, the peaceful transfer of power, we have to submit to that. This is Joe Biden said that this is the biggest recount they ever did, right? Like, they went through audits, they recounted in Georgia. He said that they recounted 3 times, and one of them was by hand. And so we can't go through this again. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't have that.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't know if in my heart of hearts, I believe that we're getting to a place where we won't see this again. And it's not over. We can still get there. I sincerely hope that we get there. But I mean, I'm looking at, so far they've arrested about 725 people. Of those 725 people, 71 have been charged. The median sentence for those charges, 45 days. A lot of people are getting off with fines and probation or at-home monitoring. And it's like, this isn't sending the message of you can't do this. I think even bigger than that for me is the fact that, I mean, what are we doing with members of Congress? What are we doing with the folks that actually work there that help them? We got video evidence of people removing barricades, of people unlocking doors or opening doors and letting insurrectionists in. Why haven't those people been charged yet? The January 6th committee came out and said that they're asking members of Congress to step up voluntarily. Why are we waiting for them to volunteer to come indict themselves? Why wouldn't we go and get them? After 9/11, we wasn't out here looking for little homies of the Taliban. We went for bin Laden. Like, we cut that terrorism off at the head. So why are we not cutting this off at the head? And why the hell am I reading about Black Lives Matter protesters getting 8 years in prison for setting garbage cans on fire, but you got people that stormed the Capitol to stop a vote, and you're letting them off with 45-day jail sentences? Like, what kind of message are we actually sending? But again, it's still ongoing. None of this is over. I'm only making comments on like where we are right now on this 1-year anniversary. So my hope is that from here, we can actually get to a place where we find real accountability, and we can find who actually led this, who actually orchestrated this, because we need to get the leaders and we need to get the organizers, and we need to make an example out of somebody.
Well, and I think that's what the Department of Justice, AG Garland, came out and talked about not yesterday. And he was just saying, like, listen, this investigation, the way that the FBI puts their stuff together is like, when they get their documentation and their receipts together, that is when they're going to get you. And so they need to get all of these little small fish, all of these little small arrests in charge, so that it can help to build that foundation for the bigger case. And so I'm optimistic that we will see something come out of that. And to your point, get these people at the head, right? And the person at the head of that is Donald Trump. And so that is a very, very, very tough case to stick. And so we got to give it some time in order for them to get their ducks in a row to make it happen. But I
agree with everything that you're saying. And I think that my worry, because yes, it's still ongoing. I think you're absolutely right. And everybody knows when the FBI comes, they come hard. So we know that there's still that possibility. I think what really scares me is that in part of me feels like we kind of lost. I mean, 19 states have made it harder to vote since January 6, 2020. 19 states. When you look at, Joe Biden won, and we always talk about like the Black folks that organized, and a lot of that came out of Georgia. Some of the most repressive moves against the right to vote are literally happening right there in Georgia. So it's like, if we're not gonna it's just hard. It's hard. It's frustrating, to be honest. And last year, I remember I sat down with my daughter and we had to have these conversations, and it was a hard conversation. And this year I wanted to follow up that article and like have this positive spin. Like 1 year later, I get to come back with my daughter and have this conversation. I don't even want to have that conversation with her because we're not in a better place just yet. So I'm going to jump on with your optimism, and hopefully we can make it there.
Well, listen, I think one thing I'm also disappointed about is that we just are out of time. And so there were so many good things to talk about, you guys.
It was the break. The break kills us. We go on break and there's a million topics.
Don't blame that break. We just run our mouth too much. Well, look, you guys, we're out of time, and we will pick up more topics next week. Make sure you tune in, same time, same place. Mike Davis, when you're not here, where can they find you?
South Seattle Emerald.
That's it? Not on.
Oh, no, that's not it.
That's not it.
I am officially taking over the Clapback Culture Instagram. So all y'all go find Clapback Culture on IG and holla at your boy. You got topics, reach out to me. We're going to try to put more show stuff up all throughout the week. I'm going to set it on my phone, so y'all got to hit me to remind me, because I ain't used Instagram in 10 years. But I'm back.
All right. He's back and he's better. Look, y'all, when I'm not here, you guys can find me on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram and Twitter at Treasure of JULES. Please go ahead and slide into my DMs. Give me some show topics so we know what you want to hear for next week. Until then, that's our show. Be blessed, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.